Hey listeners, this is Jay. Got some good news to share. If you're interested in reaching out to fellow professionals or highlighting your product or organization, well, this is for you. We're offering sponsorship opportunities for our future podcast episodes, as well as the upcoming 2025 National Parks and Recreation Association Conference in Orlando. Reach out to us at recklesspod@gmail.com if you're interested. Make sure you follow us on social media to keep up with all the news and updated episodes, and look forward to hearing from you. Hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to Season 4 of RecLess, the podcast expanding your knowledge and making you smarter about the field of parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from around the country, bringing insights, industry stories, and a surprise guest each episode. Thanks for swinging by. We're glad you're here. This is RecLess.
Jay must not have read your text.
What did he say?
He says, I've been waiting for the green light. He said, hop in at 3:35.
Yeah.
It's typical Jaybird.
Typical Jaybird. What's up?
No one told me to come in, so I didn't come in.
Thought I texted saying come in at 3:35.
He did.
Yeah, but that was from you, not from, no one ever said, I'm ready.
But he's the host and he's the Zoom man.
Yeah, but, I want to know, when you're ready. Sometimes
Jaybird,
I think
I'm
I'm going to
ready.
be ready at a certain time and you're not ready.
Jay, you're already cranky.
If you go back to our text chain, every week since day one, it says, we're ready, come on in. Come join us. Come on in.
Every week?
Let's fact
Every
check
single
this.
one.
It's so cranky. I thought, is it later you're cranky? If we did a 6 a.m. podcast, would you be happy?
6 a.m.? I'll do it, but you wouldn't be there.
I'd be there. I'll wake up
You
5
would not
a.m.
be there.
for you. I'd
6
wake up.
6 a.m. our time.
5 a.m. for Shane.
Yeah. I've already woken up early for y'all.
Yeah, 9 o'clock.
Not that early.
When we were all sleeping together, I did.
Okay,
You kind of had to.
just reword that when we were sleeping in the same room,
Nope.
not sleeping
We were
together.
sleeping together. Hannah, keep it all. Well, y'all ready?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Welcome to RecLess, 73rd episode. I got cranky Jaybird and well-traveled Tomas. Listen, we got to keep this tight. The person that's on today, their comms team is excited about this.
Okay, well,
We've already screwed this up.
They had a comms team. That's already a step up. The real Leslie Knope.
Yeah. What's up, boys?
Getting back into the swing of things here. Hopping off a plane, talking to you guys.
He's a world traveler. Jay, we're lucky to be in the presence of him, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know you were even traveling this week. Usually I know, when one of us is doing that. I didn't know that until yesterday.
Tom plays things close to the vest.
I'm sorry, guys.
He's going to have another podcast before we know it. He'll just look up one day.
I forgot to put that on our shared schedule.
Tom and the Fighting Tomcats. We're all going to be, that'll just be the podcast. Just Tom and the Tomettes? No takers. Okay. For the first time, I told y'all what we were going to talk about ahead of time. I thought I gave you enough time. Don't know if I really did. But I mentioned it a little bit during Steven's episode last week that I've come across this My 3 Rules podcast. And I think it's great. It's simple. And it talks about, and I think in some ways we all have them, whether we have them clearly defined or can articulate them quickly. Probably some non-negotiables in your life, one thing or another you think about that you adhere to. And I think the simplicity of how he breaks it down and how he talks to him and the conversations that happen is really cool. So it'll be probably a long-winded one if we explain too much, but I thought if we could just high overview of your 3 rules for happiness and success, I think it'd be something that'd be interesting. So I'll go first, give y'all a second. My 3 simple rules. Rule number 1 for me is don't be afraid to plant your flag. And I said, basically, don't be afraid to work in spaces that no one else is in, because the first person to that space gets to plant their flag and to show what success looks like in those spaces. Number 2 for me, hyper focus on your strengths. I've talked about this on this podcast and in our presentations that we've done together, but I don't mess around much with trying to grow my weaknesses. I think there is a lot of forgiveness for anyone in society. When you're really good at something, they'll be pretty forgiving of what you're not great at. If you can be incredible at a couple things. And so I think everyone's got strengths that make them something that is unlike anyone else in our industry. And I hate when I see people marginalize that for the opportunity to maybe be better at something they're weak at. So for me, I focus on your strengths. And then my last one, I think this will surprise you too. When the rules are dumb, break them. I think we live in a society where there's a bunch of arbitrary rules. And I've told my kids growing up, when the rules are dumb, break them. Now, you have to be okay with the consequences. If I think it's stupid to speed, I'll speed. Now, if I get pulled over by a cop, I can't tell the cop I think it's stupid. We live in a society of rules. We have to follow those rules. So you have to be okay with any consequences of not following those rules. But I don't allow dumb rules to prevent me from pursuing my quality of life goals. And so, when the rules are dumb, break them. So those are 3 of mine. I don't think there would be a shock in any way.
You know what, Shane? This is a really fun exercise. And going into it, I was wondering if the 3 of us would have any of the same rules. And I'm just going to go out on a limb. Jay's first rule is follow the rules.
It's so funny. It's not one of my rules, but I am a rule follower. Like I'm
surprised. I'm not surprised.
It actually came up. Oh, man, I can't think of the situation. I was doing something yesterday, and it came up as a conversation with someone else. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it that way because that's the way you're supposed to. Yeah. So it's actually kind of funny.
I would agree with you. I think I tend to be a rule follower. My wife would probably agree with that. And maybe there's some gray area. I'm not really where Shane is, but I do feel like there's some gray area, especially with all the minutia and rules and policies that we have to follow on the work level, right? There's so much. And I shouldn't say this, but sometimes, and this is not one of my rules, ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
Is applicable, I think, with what we do.
What's funny about that is that kind of backdoors what I think too, which is I think sometimes we all have to agree that rules are stupid. And you're like, I'm going to go ahead and ask for this person. I'm going to ask for forgiveness because I know it's going to work out. Everyone's going to give me grace because it's actually going to work. But if I would have asked finance blank, they would have told me no. Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah.
So, well, Shane, I give you kudos because you were succinct. And I was wondering how now I've got to tailor this and really nail it down. So I'll go. And my first is be an observer of what is going on in and around your life. So in other words, what I mean by that is being present and actively paying attention to your family, your job, your surroundings. What I've tended to see in learning over time is that when you observe and you're in a situation or a position, you evaluate that and then you take action based on everything that's going around you. It's kept me plugged in and it's put me in positions to succeed. I'll give a good example of that is when I was coming up in the ranks, right? What was around me professionally in that Minnesota conference, Shane? I knew nobody, but I did a little bit I was cognizant of what was going on. I was listening. Oh, there's going to be this network system that they're rolling out. And so I looked a little into it. There was the YPN. And then I met you. I met Brooke. And here we all are, right? So just being aware of everything that's going around in your life. And I'm not the kind of guy who's looking at everything the president is doing and everything that's happening in other countries. I'm just saying your present life, being aware, being observant.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being observant, right?
And one quote that is going to lead me into number 2, the great Ferris Bueller said, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you can miss it. So that leads me into my second rule. And that's a simple one. I hope most people would agree with this and actually live by it, but do what makes you happy when and while you can. Whether it's running, enjoying some chai. We all know Shane. This is all Shane, right? Or going on beach vacations, or maybe it's having a nice cigar, enjoying some eggs every day, or as opposed to the beach, maybe going off grid for your vacation, or maybe it's just your enjoyment for cooking like mine, or going to Disney World more often than people think you should. And I say, do that. Do what makes you happy, regardless of what other people think. And Shane, that goes to a quote that you and I have talked about by David Foster, which is basically you worry a lot less about what people think about you when you realize how seldom they do think of you. Yeah. So as long as it's not harming yourself and the other people around you, do it. Enjoy what makes you happy. And then lastly, my third rule is give out what you hope to get back. And this is applicable in every aspect of life to me. I've had to learn the hard way, I think, sometimes with family and friends, and we've talked about that work-life balance where I've put work first here and there, and I'm starting to really try to prioritize that. This trip put some things into perspective for me too with that. And especially on the work level, though, think about how much you give to the other departments in your agencies, right? If you don't give them anything, what do you expect to give back when you are asking for a favor, right? And more often than not, that has worked out extremely well for me, my agency, and just in general. And I did not tee this up, but the real Leslie Knope is our guest. There's a scene where Ben, her future husband, I believe they're planning for Harvest Fest, and they have to get a favor out of the police department. And I don't know why Leslie did this, but Leslie sends him in to talk to the police chief, or maybe he just said, hey, I think I could help. I'll take care of it. And he goes in, he's all nervous. And before he could really even get out what he was asking of the police chief said, is this for Leslie Knope? He goes, yes. The chief goes, Leslie gets whatever she wants, because Leslie always gave to those individuals.
Love it. That's great. Not surprising, actually. I think this is a cool thing because I think for people that it kind of confirms what you know. I think for the people that you don't know necessarily very well, I think you learn things about them very quickly. It's a hack to get to know them at a different level because you get to know pretty quickly the things they find value and they care about. I'm enjoying this. What you got, Jay?
A little deeper than we usually go.
It is
in the early minutes of this.
Hey, did you have any duplicates to what we've said, or are we going to hear 3 new rules?
2 are new. One is like you can tie it a little bit to something you said.
Okay.
So my first one, and this is something I've kind of lived by. I think I started like having this philosophy in high school, and it's to live my life with no regrets. And I think it ties into work. It ties into like just general philosophy on like what you pursue for happiness from a work perspective. And we've talked about this, and I think Shane, I might have mentioned this in the presentation we gave in Boston, is like I actually want staff to fail. Like I think we learn more from failures than we will from any successes we ever have, whether that is me going to a concert and like trying to figure out where I want to park or where I want to be, whether it's work related and how you do a special event. Like you're never going to learn if everything goes perfect. And the more you have failures, the more you're going to learn from it. But I want that attitude to be like, if you do fail, it's not a regret and be like, oh, I wish I didn't do that, because you're going to learn from it. You're not going to make that mistake again. So every decision I've ever made, every, trip I've ever gone to, whether it's a great trip or a bad trip, it's like, I don't regret it because I made a decision. I'm going to stick with it. And it's a decision I have to live with. And like, I'm going to learn from it. So never live with any regrets. I personally always want to and try to live my life looking through a positive lens. I think there's so many things that we do that we may not want to do. There's meetings we have to go to. We're stuck with a work perspective of always having to do like nights and weekends and
this podcast.
Like that. What's that?
This podcast.
Yeah, sometimes, especially when you're getting harassed for being late, even though I was never told to come on. But it's all about perspective. And it's like everything that we do, we can look at it and be like super happy about it and look at it positively, or we can, go to a meeting and just plug along like we don't want to be there, and then it's just going to like impact the staff in a negative way. But the more positive you can be, the more glass half full type of attitude you can have towards something, it's going to also overflow to your staff and to your family and to your kids. And if your kids are seeing you look at things positively, then hopefully they look at things positively versus always the opposite. And I know people that don't have a positive attitude towards things and they never seem happy. And it's just like, you look at them and you're like, man, like you hate your job, you hate your life. Like, what could you do different? And it may not be that they hate it, but they just give off that aura that they don't like what they do. So I think that can tremendously impact how people look at things, perceive things, just by having a positive attitude. And the last one, and I actually thought about this for a while when Shane, you shared this, because this is more of like a newer perspective, even though it's not, but it's more relatable to life outside of work, is prioritize what matters most to you. And 10 years ago, I will completely admit this, and my wife would completely admit that like I prioritized everything around work. And it was like I need to commit to work 24/7. My phone never turned off. I'm checking my emails at 10 o'clock at night. I'm laying in bed thinking about work. I might be responding to emails 11 o'clock at night. You know, that's not the prioritizing that I want to have as a father and as a husband right now. And, you know, not to get too deep with things, but like you never know what life's going to throw at you and things can change in an instant. And, you know, if something happened to me or, you know, someone in my family tomorrow, I don't want to be known because I always prioritized work. So prioritize what matters most to you. And you know what? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I think work is fine to prioritize if that's what your main focus is. But now I have a family. I want to focus on my family. So that needs to be my first priority.
Yeah. No, that's great.
That's good stuff, Jay. And I still struggle with that last one. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's what I was talking about, perspective, that I got delayed yesterday and it was just another day that I wasn't going to be with the family. And that was the hardest thing to wrestle with, but also trying to put a positive spin on it. To your second rule, right, is like, that's not the worst thing that could happen. A lot worse things that could happen than being stuck overnight in Denver, right? And Shane, you told me a story, and I don't mean to belabor this conversation, but I really enjoy it. You told me a story yesterday that ties really well into what Jay just talked about and prioritization. And you and Hannah, your anniversary, and I mean, you could tell the story, but it
was our 25th year anniversary, and I'm not a big traveler. Everyone knows that, and I'm not very positive about it when I do. Everyone knows that. But we love New Orleans, and it's a short distance from us. It's 8 hours, and so I was like, let's just go to 8-hour drive because I want to have life.
Nobody in life says that's a short distance.
It is.
He's just got a positive. It's a positive impact.
Drive,
yeah.
So I said,
okay. I live 3 hours from Charleston. We go to Charleston every year. That's short. What is 3 hours to you? If 8 hours is short, what's 3 hours?
Well, Dallas is 3 hours away. That's short, I guess.
Okay. All right.
but I was like, hey, let's just go to New Orleans. Let's figure it out. I knew that I had the podcast, but I thought there'll be a coffee shop somewhere that I can plug into, if not the hotel. I wasn't a big deal. And then Hannah had a client who had just come off vacation and wanted to follow some of the marketing and advertising. And that landed on the time that we were going to take. And then our daughter, she's a junior, and I have missed her last two, her freshman and her sophomore spring showcase, because it always falls on the third Thursday of every month, and that's Parks Commission for me. And I was taking Parks Commission off because it just happened to be on the week of my 25th anniversary. I talked to the city. They're like, yeah, Jeff can handle it. No big deal. I was like, cool. So I'm going to mix Park Commission. We're going to go to New Orleans. And then these couple things started popping up. So my daughter gets a solo part, and it pops up on this night. And I start thinking, I've missed two of these due to Parks Commission. I may have already taken another job somewhere. As y'all have seen in my life, I've moved ahead of Hannah a couple different times. And so, I may not be here a year from now to see this senior performance. And so as we started talking about it, I was like, Austin's just as good of a town as New Orleans when you talk about food or fun, like as they compare, they're towns that people travel to. It's not like I was offering to go to Abilene instead of New Orleans. It's an incredible city, right? And so I was like, let's staycation our anniversary, which isn't something people staycation. They're staycation sometimes, they're vacations. You don't see a lot of people do that necessarily for their big anniversaries. But what we did was we have gone into Austin every Thursday and then today and eaten at places we've never eaten at before. We've gone to parts of Austin we've never gone to. We've gone into stores that we always have said, oh, we should try that place sometime. We've hit Austin as a tourist, which has been unique since we've been here 7 years.
It sounded like you just said terrorist.
We were.
He did.
We were a bit of a terrorist when we got there. And I was like, man, this place is crazy. And man, y'all let women vote. No, I'm just kidding. So we go in and we hit these spots and we're just enjoying them as a tourist, but we were there for our daughter last night. And is it the way I'm saying it? So we had our, I'm not gonna believe the terrorist part, but
this podcast is gonna get flagged and pulled because you talked about travel and being a
this
terrorist.
poor person's not gonna be able to share this with their comms team. They're gonna be like, oh, I don't know what happened. So but we got to see her perform last night, and she didn't see us for the longest time. At the last act, she was singing and she saw us and broke down crying in the middle of it. And I have my kids in a different phase of life that y'all do. I won't get many more of those. Like my kids are 23, 21, 19, and 17. And so there's a lot more lasts coming around for me than firsts, and so we just said, yeah, New Orleans has been there probably 300 years. It'll be there a couple more. We can hit that up later. And that's what we did. So
yeah, it's a memory you'll never forget.
No, yeah, it was important for both us and her.
And so. I don't know if you said this, but she believed you were in New Orleans.
She did. We made her believe that we were there. And so she sent us a text that day saying, enjoy New Orleans. And I said, good luck tonight. We love you. And, she was totally shocked. So it was cool.
So like the way I said it to you yesterday, you were kind of a terrible parent, right? Telling her,
made her think we were terrible.
We're going to be in New Orleans. We're going to have a great time. Good luck on your show.
Yeah.
but you showed up.
You know me, love me or hate me. All right. Always fucking around with people. Hashtag earmuff Rooney. Okay. Let's go ahead and introduce this guest who we have all known for a very long time. But more importantly, they actually like us. And they like all three of us. Like they know us as a threesome. Is that belaboring the time we all slept together? And they have been mentioned on this podcast multiple times by other people. When I think of this person, and I know we have people that we respect, people in our industry that we think of, they're good at one thing or 17 others. This person's probably one of the most fearless, resilient, tough people in our industry. And I don't say that lightly. I think they are, I think they're someone that's committed to doing things the way they believe it should be done. And have been incredibly tough, have gone through some really interesting struggles at different times in their career, but they are as fearless and resilient of a park and rec professional that I think I know. They have worked in 3 different time zones, won multiple national awards, been the president of their state conference, have been on the board of directors of multiple different entities, including their state conference, but also like nonprofit.
I've got an idea already.
Okay.
All right.
They were a governor appointee on a task force in their state. Jay, anything yet? Okay. They did their undergrad from Larry Bird's alma mater. So you got to know where Larry Bird went to know this.
Okay.
They did their master's from Drew Brees' alma mater. So you got to know where Drew Brees went. Like Tom, they've been a professor and a Parks and Rec professional. I think Jay knows as well now, too.
I do.
KK.
Yeah. They made history as one of the firsts of a previous department they worked for. Our guest is our special friend, Kara, the director of Parks and Rec for the city of Loveland, Colorado.
Kara Kish. I was just in Colorado.
Gentlemen, it's so good to see you.
Great
Kara
to see you.
Kish.
What's up, girl?
I just got like this wave of just like excitement and energy because I have not seen your face in a while.
I could see it on your face too, Jay.
No,
when
like
when you figured it out.
It's like truly a thing. Like Kara and I have a great bond, and I mean we all do in our YPN fam. But I wish I could see and talk to Kara more.
Absolutely. She was my first guest I reached out to. Now y'all took half the season from me before I ever got started calling people, but she was the first person I reached out to. And she was super excited to be on. So thank you so much for being on with us in our stupid little podcast.
I'm thrilled to be here. I've been celebrating you guys since the beginning and just delighted to come chat with you.
So I talked about resiliency, and you've had some tough goes at some different spots, and you've remained Kara, first of all, and steadfast in your beliefs of how you should do things. And if they don't like it, you or they can move on, but you haven't changed that. You're facing some uphill challenges now, specifically with some of the budgetary issues you're having. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about your mindset, how you stay true to yourself, how you don't bend when other people's would bend in the face of that type of scrutiny and pressure. What makes you say, no, this is how I believe we should be doing it. This is how we're going to do it as long as I'm leading.
I've always had my North Star, which is the value of parks and recreation to our communities. It existed in me when I was a child and I couldn't name it, true Parks and Rec kid. And first job was lifeguarding in a Parks and
With
Recreation
Heggerness.
with Ryan as well. Yes. Which I love that got brought up. Ryan and I, our days at the pool together. But when I started my undergrad work, it just locked in. This is my North Star of the thing. One of the things that I am most passionate about in my entire life is the legitimacy of Parks and Recreation as a function of government. And then I partnered with my personal skill sets, which I think are best served in the role as director. Just put me in a position to be able to affect good choices within the administration of that, but also put me in a position to the best of my ability, to influence good policy choices, whether or not it's city management choices or elected official choices. And there's been a lot of bumps in the road and a lot of pushback on that throughout my career. And just it's always been the North Star. It's not that I haven't been rocked along the way. I certainly have, but it doesn't change. And it's always been there. I imagine it will always be there through the course of my life, and nothing shakes that.
Well, and you talk to that like it hasn't changed, but we all know people who have changed for one reason or seven others due to pressures or expectations or something else being pressed onto them in our industry. We've seen people come in with the Midas touch and they've lost it, or we've seen people come in shot like they're shot out of a cannon, and they experienced a couple no's, or they came up against some friction in some way, and instead of that making them stronger, it smoothed them out, right? But you have this grit about you that you just, I don't know. I think all of us have been, obviously all of us have been leaders, all of us have been directors of the department. At some point, you have to have a higher view than everyone else in your team. You have to be able to see further along the trail, and they have to trust your vision of that. But you seem to be able to get true buy-in from your staff on that vision. I don't always get that. Like, I have 47 full-time staff. I'm fine with half of them not understanding why we're going this way, and just this is what Shane says we got to do, and ultimately begrudgingly maybe they do it, and ultimately maybe it comes out right. And I'm not saying that's the way to go. I should probably be better at that, but you do a really good job of getting buy-in from your staff and then believing in the vision that maybe only you can see from a higher perspective. What do you do to sell that?
I show up on day one validating sort of the expert power that each one of my staff member has, whether or not that's a senior manager or frontline staff. I make the connection between the impact of their work and the value of the community. One of my favorite questions to ask is something along the lines of like, what is the impact of your work on the user experience? And one of my favorite responses is, oh, I just clean the bathrooms, or I just pick up the trash, or just mow. And I think it's the most interesting part of their psyches to dig into, because as soon as I'm able to reach out and be like, no, you have the single most important job on our team, and that's the director saying that to them, I feel like it makes connections in their brain, and it validates the hard work that they do over and over, day after day, when people abuse those sites, because people are benefiting from their work. But I show up again, validating their expert power. I'm really interested in providing my team with autonomy, but also sort of scaffolding and support. A lot of times my day looks like a helicopter. I land in parks, and we chat about the struggles of the day or the direction, and then I take off, and that manager goes and takes care of that. And then I land in open lands and trails, and then we have those same discussions. And so my entire day is always distributed like between the different leaders, and giving them the support, strength, encouragement, and maybe reaffirming their role, and giving them the opportunity to exercise their role. That's really important to me. Not whether or not it's senior management or any person on our staff. I always prefer that the person closest to the work speaks to the work. So as the director, I do not need to publicly speak on behalf of everything. I feel I have a responsibility to elevate and allow the person with the expertise to speak to it, and whether or not that's putting them on an agenda rather than myself, or acknowledging them, bringing them into a meeting, acknowledging them. And so I hope the way that I show up as a leader creates an environment where we all understand the value of the work we're doing and working towards whatever that is. And I don't know what that vision is on day one, but I still show up in that capacity to make those connections for the staff and honor their expertise.
Well, Kara, and I love how you started that talking about asking folks what they do and almost wanting those responses, because I think when you have folks that are in a position, they may not see the day-to-day impacts that Parks and Rec have on residents and on communities. Those are the things that people need to know. And those are things that we don't always do as much as we probably should. Share success stories, share the impact. It's easy for people that run special events, people that run programs to see that. But the folks that are behind the scenes, the ops teams that are working from 6:30 to 3:30, or that are, they're done before the people take the athletic fields, before the tournaments, before the rentals happen, and they actually see everything come together. Like, they don't know that impact sometimes unless we tell them that. So, getting down to the roots so they understand that is huge. Sharing when we get emails and, successes that people want to share feedback from programs, like, it doesn't just need to be shared with the program staff. It needs to be shared with the staff that set up the room and set up the facilities and cut the grass and make sure that, every aspect of that tournament that was successful, it wasn't just because the athletic staff put it on, it's because the maintenance team prepped it so that it could be successful. So I love that aspect.
So, Shane, you asked me, how do I create that environment? I show up really early on, focused on creating a visual or an actual experience for my team that I will take the arrows. Right? I'll take the arrows and then I push the praise. And I remember the first time when I was here, I think it was at a council meeting or something, and I spoke sort of, on the whole, and defending and or supporting why we were taking an approach and didn't defer to somebody else. So really, I think that also gains a lot of buy-in, especially if I can produce that early on and often, and then continue with that. So yeah, take all the arrows, push all the praise is really key to, I think, who I show up as a leader.
Kara, you talked about day one, right? So from day one, and I don't know that we talk about that enough, because that's a tough day, right? And when I say day one, that's, weeks, months, maybe even years. What, outside of getting people in the room and talking to them and leaning on their expertise, can you talk through some of the challenges there, though, as well? There are definite challenges, right? You're going into a new environment that you potentially have individuals who have been there and rooted for years and years. What's your approach, or how do you overcome those challenges to get the buy-in?
It's probably different now than it was earlier in my career, and I'm not sure that I remember, but one of the things that I like to show up very early on now is that just conveying that I understand the work you do. I think the concern when somebody new comes in is they don't know anything about our work. And I was kind of throwing around this phrase when I got here. I'm like, I know everything you do and nothing that you do simultaneously. So you're actually getting somebody who's been an industry professional and I've heard of or experienced the things you're talking about, but my job is to really dive in and learn what it is specific to this organization. And so I show up in those ways, and I find ways to seek it out. My first 12 months is incredibly aggressive about getting out. Whether or not it's a formal meeting, I went down to the supervisor level. My first 6 months, I had a one-on-one with every supervisor without their manager in the room, and then got out and exposed myself to because the sooner that I could speak the language of this Parks and Recreation system, the better I was seen as somebody who could facilitate moving forward with them. It's nice. I think my staff, I always see a physical response when I go out and see them, and maybe I haven't seen them for 3 or 4 months, but I'm talking about the details of what's going on in their job right now, because whether or not I'm with them, I'm paying attention to to the world that's going on under their feet. So yeah, I think just early on is making sure that they understand, I know the work that they do, which again, not just the scope of the work they do, but the impacts on them personally to do those works. A majority of my career has been more in park ops than it has been in recreation. And so that, labor force that always feels distant from management, I think I connect with really strongly. And that's the majority of my staff as a large labor force who are keeping our parks looking phenomenal and our ball fields looking phenomenal. So I think that kind of captures, Tom, how I show up from the
It
beginning.
does. And that's really great advice for individuals. And I'm just going to have a follow-up question before Shane or Jay jumps in. What I also find admirable is you've moved, Shane obviously alluded to this in the intro, but you've moved around the country. You had just made a comment in the answer to the last question about I know nothing, but I know everything, right? And I was just in Colorado, and okay, so we were talking about some topics that maybe everybody can relate to, service and culture. However, landscapes are an entirely, I mean, that blew my mind what I experienced when I was in Colorado, and they shared so much with me about the mountains and the altitude and how it impacts the land. It was Mountain Rec that I was with, and they were talking about this pool that had basically it became unsettled, the ground, twice because of the type of soil. So this pool went under basically, and they now are rebuilding it a third time and have this whole ridiculously technical process to get it so that it doesn't do that again, right? So just going into a different landscape, a different environment, what's your preparation? And I guess what drives you to do that? That could be scary for some people to get out of maybe, and I'm not saying anything different about Shane, Jay, or myself, but I've stayed in 3 organizations in the same climate. Shane, you've been in Texas. Jay, since you've been in North Carolina, you've been in North Carolina. So again, I find that admirable. What drives you to do that, and how do you overcome what I would call kind of it's a little bit of a scariness to go into the unknown?
The steep learning curve, certainly. But I mean, my forwardness as a lifelong learner, every single test that I could take, the scales of what your strengths are, like all of the inputs, the lifelong learner, all of that really drives who I am as a person, not just a professional. And so like to get in there and especially what you said, just the climate specifics of being here after being a career in the Midwest is completely different. But I to your point of I know everything and I know nothing. I know what ground management looks like. Now I need to learn what it looks like here. I know what forestry management looks like. Now I need to learn what it looks like here. All of these things that, yes, there was a giant void, Tom. I had to learn. And I think my team also saw me diving into that. Water in the West is something incredibly unique and 180 from the Midwest. In the Midwest, we spend our careers trying to keep water out of the rivers. And here it's the exact opposite. And so not just trying to soak up from my team, and again, the expertise that they hold, but also immerse myself in learning opportunities. So I just completed a year-long program called the Water Literate Leaders, covering water in 360 and all of the angles that contribute to management of water and usage of water in the West. And I think my team sees me doing that. So Tom, I appreciate it. Yes, I think my curiosity is greater than my fear, or my desire to continue to expand my knowledge base is greater than my anxiety about it. But I fully tackle these things. It's just a part of who I am, not just as a professional, but as a person. And I think it makes me a stronger leader because everything, our careers were all about mid-career. It's just been building and building and building on it. And so this is just another layer of what I can bring in terms of my knowledge base to the profession.
Yeah, I love that response. And just for individuals out there who are listening, who are afraid to take a leap of faith to somewhere that's unknown or that's the unfamiliar, it's a great lesson. And I would agree. I mean, I would see that you seem fearless, and I think Shane kind of alluded to that in the intro as well.
Yeah, and I mean, just trying to navigate. Every state's got a different income tax. Every state's got a different DMV system. Maybe it's not even called DMV. I don't know. I've always been in Texas, so Department of Motor Vehicles or whatever it is. And so every state, you have to navigate getting your license in the first 6 months and establishing residency and doing all the things that we all take for granted when you go from plug and play park director here to plug and play park director here. But if those two things were both done in North Carolina or Texas or New York, I imagine the residency part, some of that stuff doesn't change, right? But if you go to 3 or 4 different time zones, which you've worked in at different times of your career and states in those time zones, I think a lot of them could change. You said something earlier, and I had written it down. I wanted to follow up with you on it anyways. In grad school, they used to call us reckies or parkies. Like you come up in this industry on one side or the other. And at some point, if you decide you want to be a director, you start to look at the other side as less of a lesser, as some sort of necessary evil and more as a group that you're getting to know and understand more and even appreciate, right? So like I was a rec guy growing up, and as I grew in my career and got to understand what parks and the impact they were having on them and what those ops guys were like and how great of a crew those crews are, you start to form an appreciation for both sides of Parks and Rec. But you came up as a parkie, obviously. Now, I mean, you entry level, you were a lifeguard, probably a camp counselor. When I look at some of your classes that you even taught in academic side, it was more rec side and planning side. So to go this park side, we haven't had, I mean, you don't talk about a boys club. Parks is a bit more of a, first of all, it's usually more introverted. NRPA as a whole, if you look at the membership, it's got to be 75% reckies, versus the 25% of the park side. And then of that group, it's much more of a boys club, right? It's much more of, what I'm thinking. I think maybe Karen Hesser, Kathy Caps, and you,
Meredith.
Yep. There's a couple different groups that have come up in a couple different ladies that we know that have come up in that side. But how do you do that? Come up in a side where, you kind of got to crack the hard exterior of those guys before they're like, oh, she's one of us and embraces just like anything else. But, there's probably even a different dynamic of me trying to convince them I'm from a different state and a different director than, oh, it's a female. She doesn't know anything about lands, she doesn't know how to manage water, So what has that been like in your career?
See, how do I want to answer that? There's a lot in there.
Sure.
I don't know if land management and park ops was my, identified the direction I wanted to go in. My first jobs out of college were a rec coordinator and a rec manager, which is an incredibly traditional entry into our system. But when I was, I served a couple years as a coordinator, and then I took a rec manager position. And then again, just I think because of my personal strengths, I was ready to take on more of an administrative role. And the opportunity for me was to go back to Terre Haute, Indiana, and run the Vigo County Parks and Recreation Department, which county parks just have inherently different structures and employment needs. And so, but it was so early on in that process of shifting over into county land management that I realized, okay, this is actually the thing that I'm most passionate about. I have so much respect for recreation. I value public recreation, but my personal passions are in the land management and in the park land management. And so I show up to my first administrative position. I wasn't the director at the time. I was the assistant director, but I am by far the youngest by 30 years minimum. For maybe 30, inching up there. And I am the only woman. Very early on, I wasn't in that position very long before I ascended into the directorship position. And so there was a young woman leader of a predominantly older male staff. And so everything from approaching the culture, standing in my strength, walked into one of the park shop restrooms, and there were a lot of posters of scantily clad women. And here I am using this, and I'm like, absolutely not. This doesn't exist here from this point forward. And so stepping into making some really strong choices, but also then experiencing both sexism and ageism very early in my career. There was a group of men in that community who had been running the show who knew they had to deal with me because of the position I had been appointed in, but was literally told to let them run it, sit down. They know they have to work with me. A woman can't do your job. Certainly a woman of your age can't do your job. Blatant. Yeah, it was quite traumatic and but so much, I think, character building for me. But yeah, I have predominantly been a woman leader of male dominated teams. So the opportunities for me to affect that, to affect the relationships that these men have with women has been profound in my career. The opportunity to elevate women into leadership positions who are deserving and strong leaders. One of the easiest hiring decisions I made was when I became the director of Cincinnati Parks and I needed to fill a deputy position. And we completely restructured the organization to put all maintenance operations under a single leader. They had been divided up under multiple leadership sort of channels. And her name was Jenny Mobley, and she was a senior leader within the maintenance division. And I made her the deputy director, and she was solely responsible for the maintenance teams. And to your point, she was one of them. She had joined their team in the 90s and was respected within their team. And so she had that buy-in on day one, where, as you said, I kind of had to earn my buy-in by showing up differently. But that was the easiest hiring choice I've ever made. And it was, then you had a director, deputy director, all-female team. My division manager of natural resources was a woman that I promoted. And so just to affect this, to have experienced what I've experienced as a woman in our industry, to stand in that and change cultures through my leadership, I hope that, I hope there is some lasting changes that are derived from what I've endured.
Well, I want to add kind of a question that's based off of what you just started saying, and then also the past question about, how do you get the courage or the motivation to move? And I know one thing that's been valuable to you and others that we've talked to is just having mentors and having people to lean on. And has that been a factor that's helped you make those difficult decisions to maybe move across the country or take a different opportunity or get through hard chances or hard, challenges that you've been faced with over your career path?
I don't know that the mentorships that I've had have sort of prepared me to want to move across the country. What I do think that my mentorships prepared me for was sort of standing in this responsibility and standing within this role that I occupy. Two of my very early mentors were Joseph Wins from Indianapolis and Dietrich Stanford, who was at Clayton County. And those men, we're not getting into that today, but we talk about allyship of men in support of women. And those two from the get were just so incredibly supportive and instrumental in me being able to stand in these responsibilities that I had and show up to the demands of what this was for me. And like I said, I don't know that created the opportunity or the strength for me to move. Obviously, being a part of NRPA, we're from the moment we enter in, we're meeting people from across the country. And so you are already expanding sort of the scope of what you know. When I was in college, it was just within the state association. And of course, my life makes it easier for me to pick up and go. So other than myself, there's not much else to weigh in terms of whether or not I will be happy in a certain place or enjoy a certain place. And so I don't know how much of my desire to move across the country for different opportunities is based on sort of my personal situation versus the mentorship that I've had, but exposure to our industry on a national level, I think probably was the instrumental thing in me at least being able to envision a career that moves.
You just touched upon kind of the differences of going from having the state exposure to the national exposure. So, I think it's a good time to ask the question about, or ask a question about our YPN fam. So we talk about that on from time to time, and you are indeed an integral part of that. And I guess maybe from your perspective, I know we've talked a little bit, but I'd love to hear it from your perspective. I think we've talked about it, but for our listeners, how instrumental has that been? You know, these aren't individuals that you necessarily, I would call all of you mentors to an extent, but I don't look at you the same way as, say, the mentors that I've been paired with, right? It's a relationship, it's a family, right? So how instrumental has that been for you, that group, getting through challenges, moving through triumphs, both personal and professional?
Tom, it's been everything. First of all, maybe the little bit of bravery that it takes to step outside of my state. So the decision very early on in my career to become involved in NRPA, which there was no budget for the recreation coordinator to go. And so exploring those opportunities for the NRPA fellowship was the first one, which helped to where you and I met, Tom, in 2010, I think. And then I just wanted more. I wanted more. And so I found other ways to get back to conference. So through the externship, you negotiated with my boss to be able to support either in whole or in part my presence at NRPA conferences. But then early on, the sort of the momentum that we all brought to forming the Young Professional Network gave us all not just strength and validity in ourselves, but strength and validity in our overall NRPA peers and NRPA leadership and the mentors that we looked up to. So now here we are, a group of young adults, affecting change. And we were all there for it. We were there for each other, but we were there for anybody else who sort of carried those same monikers as we did, young in the profession, new in the profession. But particularly, the opportunities to form a close relationship with about a dozen of us, maybe 10 or 12 of us. While that's unique to the group that we exist in, there are so many other groups like that have formed. We see it in the people who are coming behind us are forming their own bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is fun to see.
It's amazing. Yeah. And I see it in the people who came before us as well. And so we're a special cohort who gets to support each other throughout the entirety of our careers and our lives. And to your point, Tom, early on, it was about the job and it was about our shared passion in parks and recreation, but then to become something more, to become family, to extend to your significant others and your children in all of that. I think I've connected with your families in different ways, even outside of, just talking as the group, but whether I was visiting or sending your kids something, or I think I sent Melissa something once, just randomly. And guys, I cannot say how profound when I say it's everything, like this group is everything, and the support that those groups offer us. One of the greatest challenges and most profound changes in my life was after the loss of one of my positions, just political turmoil and a lot of things like that, was the strength that this group gave me to sort of uncouple what was a direct correlation between my professional success and my self-worth. Prior to that loss, they were one and the same. And the strength of this group to show up and say, we do not see you as director, we see you as Kara. That was the foundational elements that I was able to build off. And it's taken me years to explore that, strengthen that, heal from that. And I genuinely do think that there's so much difference has been made in my life because of that struggle and the work that I've done to sort of personal work that I've done to heal from that and grow from that. But this group on day one showing up and say, we love you, Kara. Like, we don't love you, Parks and Recreation Director. Gosh, if everybody could find the strength within a cohort of their own to have that support. And that is what showing up at NRPA provided me. Like, showing up day one was the foundation of all of this. And then my willingness and my interest to dive in.
I think we've talked about it a little bit about building a network or a tribe or whatever's cool to say. And I do think I'll look back over my career and the thing I'm most proud of is probably all the work that we did on the YPN And that work, what it led to states and what it led to, how I think it fundamentally changed a lot of things about NRPA, even I think for the better. But if it just led to the 12 or 13 of us being the cohort that we were, I'd have done it just for that. Like, I think, we're about a year and a half now into Hannah's health scare. And the very first people I told was our group, like 24, 48 hours before I told any family members, before we told social media. Like, and I see that other people will share, I got a job, I haven't told anybody else yet. This thing's happening, I haven't told anybody else yet. And it's at one time that group was a group of ambitious young professionals, but because we also allowed our vulnerability, we leaned into that as well. We became really close humans who really care about everyone's success and happiness, except for Kevin Whitty, obviously.
Man, shots fired.
Just kidding,
I can agree to that. I think.
Wait.
The Kevin part?
The
Yeah.
Kevin part?
No,
That's on record.
That's it.
So
I was joking, Kevin. He was serious. You should have saw his face.
When we were talking in the beginning about, your 3 rules, and I mentioned, the last one that I was talking about with prioritization of things in life and focusing on what makes you, what motivates you, what you just said, Shane, and what Kara just said. Like, I went through some struggles last year, and like, I think I shared more probably with you, Shane, and Tom than like I shared with family members.
Yeah.
And that's what you can gain if you really want to invest into friendships that might be started from a work perspective, that people can relate on what we do and have similar passions. You never know where it can go. And if there's anyone that's listening or that has ever been like, well, I've never been to a conference, what can I get from it? Like, those are some of the things that you can get if you really want to, but you have to put yourself out there. You have to be vulnerable. You have to try to meet new people, and you have to want to grow both personally and professionally. And, there's thousands of folks that I've talked to that have had similar experiences, and that you mentioned it, like, the more recent YPN leadership teams, and even people before us that maybe weren't part of YPN, but other networks. We talked about it on this podcast with other guests, with Karen and Cindy. And having their tribe. And I love seeing that. I love hearing these stories of people that, maybe met at a conference, and now they plan trips around conferences before and after. And it is not something that is the norm. I just had a friend of mine who works in the insurance industry. He just went on a work conference, and it was like solely work. Did they go out and have a good time with some coworkers? Yes, but not to the extent that we see or we do personally at our conference.
I wonder if there is a uniqueness to our field of work or our industry that, daily we are choosing to connect our work experience or our what we are contributing to the world in, human development and human joy.
I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is we're always so willing to share things that it's our second nature to like want to help another agency or another department, another staff member, because we've done it. Like, we know how to put on a certain special event. We know if we're going to try to do this new program, and someone else wants to do it, or maybe you got an idea from them for this program, like, we're going to help them, because it's not competition. Like, we're all doing the same thing. We're trying to better our communities. We're trying to make a difference in people's lives. And not every industry can say that they are getting advice on how to improve their job from other people in the industry.
We're community service, community oriented. We're service oriented, but so are teachers. And Hannah goes to a conference that doesn't have the cohorts where when she was in the education side that we have either. And so I do think in some ways, maybe it's not even just Parks and Rec specific. You just find your people. But when I think of the 3 rules that I had, whether it's playing in areas no one else plays in, hyper focusing on your strengths and don't be afraid to break the rules. I also can, without hesitation, say I probably have those because I have a cohort of people who care about me if I fall on my face after every one of those rules. It probably does change your rules for success and happiness if you don't have a tribe of people standing behind you that says, we got you if you fall, or if you, we'll help you stand up and dust yourself off. And so Like I said,
I mean,
I hope the YPN has a huge impact, and it has a huge impact for a long time. But if it was only for all of us to connect, I'd have done it all over again.
Or if you fall off a skateboard, you got people to pick you up. People
Band-Aid
pick you up.
Yeah.
I would just add one more point to that connection piece, and it ties back to so many of the rules, like that rules discussion we had. Not only do I believe that closeness comes from the I guess the fact that we were just all kind of put together, right? And we found each other. There's also a certain vulnerability and relatability because we all do the same things, right? And I'm not saying every job is cookie cutter. I'm just saying that we understand each other to that point. We talk about Kara, this goes back to what you had mentioned before. And Jay, there are not a lot of people who find the passion for what they do, right? And we do. I think the majority of this profession does have a passion for what they do. But as we've talked about in so many episodes, that comes at a cost. That comes at a cost of losing time with family. That comes at a cost of losing time with the friends that you have already had, maybe in your own, wherever it is that you live, right? So there's I think it goes so much deeper to the extent that we just all enjoy each other and we work in the same profession. It's just we all can relate to each other and be vulnerable with one another because of that.
Because we're as close or closer to people that you live next to or have grown up with.
100%.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Okay, Kara, it's rapid fire time. These are our quick hitters, and these are tough questions. Okay, coming in hot and heavy. So number one, there is a rumor on the street that Leslie Knope was loosely based on your life. Is that true?
It's not true. It's not true. Came during the middle. No, but one of the reasons Shane put that on there is Leslie Knope, is I do think I have a special claim to it.
And you're not the only one. Other people have said that.
Yeah, back in the day, I know Barbara Tulipane even mentioned it. Here's my rationale, gentlemen. So majority of my career in Indiana. When I first took the assistant director position, my boss was a woodworker. That's what he loved to do.
All this is lost on Jay.
That's Ron Swanson, Jay. Yeah. That's the woodworker. And Indiana is where the show took place.
Let's keep it going.
It's a state.
Let's keep it going. So as the second in command, I effectively ran the show. He was much more happy being out in the woods and just you handle politics, you handle admin, you handle all that. And then the ultimate proof that I have is that I turned a pit into a national award winning park.
There's a whole song about the pit, Jay. I recommend you. What about the color coded binders?
No, not a binder.
Okay,
not a binder.
Okay.
I mean, there are some missing elements, but
Leslie Knope was a land management gal too. She went into the national park system, I think. So
she did.
So I see a lot of correlations.
There are. That's awesome.
The Griffin Bike Park was an amazing asset. It was not a pit in the sense of the show where there was a hole in the ground, but it was an old strip mine pit with 300 acres with a 30-acre lake in the middle. Spill piles when they extracted the coal from the ground that were 30 foot high and about 60 years of old forest growth on it. And so we built that, and the park is still expanding, and it NRPA awarded it with a design award, I think in 2017. So I think all people love being associated with Leslie Knope, though. So just generally women in government, obviously women in parks and recreation. But yeah, I do tend to sprinkle in those little details about my connection.
Loosely based.
I love it. And Jay learned a few things. So, all right, my question here is, it starts with a short story that Kara, obviously we know that you travel. You also love to travel on a personal note. And Kara came through my neck of the woods.
Because she'll travel to where YPN family are.
Yes. And so Kara and I got to have a nice lunch together. Through her travels, she made it a point to come and visit with me and eat lunch. Whereas I was in the same stadium with Jay and he didn't make it a point to see me. So, hashtag not bitter. Either way, Kara.
Did you try to come my way?
Okay. So we've had this discussion before.
It's his question.
Kara came from like hours away to come my way. So anyway, my actual question, Kara, was I was able to, I love when people come my way, and I get Michael Biedenstein came last year, and I got to take both of you to two different spots, two of my favorite spots. And I took you to a restaurant called Fiorella. I want you to be honest. How was that experience? Not the company, but the food. And if we go to Loveland, where are you taking us to eat?
I remember that meal. I had a lilac in my hair.
Did?
I had gone to the park and there was just lilac bushes all over, and it was the handmade spaghetti and those memories. Because I think I've visited all three of you in your homes and visited with your families and your communities. And Shane and I ate ribs that were
That's right.
over a foot long.
Beef ribs.
Beef ribs. All right.
Jay and I caught a ball game with the families, and I loved coming to visit you in New York. That was really great experience because I was doing sort of an off the beaten path tour around central and northern, was it central New York?
Upstate is what they call it.
I wasn't going to be there and not have the opportunity to come see you. What was your second question, Tom?
Where are you taking us when we come to Loveland?
Oh, okay. My answer is going to be our breweries.
Good answer.
Okay.
City of Loveland downtown is small by comparison to the cities I've lived in. It's about 5 blocks by 5 blocks, but 4 breweries, 3 coffee shops, 20 plus restaurants. And so the opportunity to sort of brewery hop and grab some good food along the way. I enjoy experiencing downtown Loveland. And so we'll just hop around to different places all day long.
I like it. A taste of Loveland.
Taste of Loveland.
Sounds fantastic. You mentioned the Griffin Bike Park in Vigo County a couple minutes ago, and I remember seeing that when you opened it and being just like drawn to the production of that. It was obviously a huge addition to that neighborhood. If there was one project that you are most proud of throughout your entire career, is that what you would say, or is there something else that comes to mind?
No, there's something else that comes to mind, Jay. And I think I'm distorting your picture of what a project is. I actually think that the thing I am most proud of is the work I did in the city of Cincinnati to reorganize.
Okay. Cool.
Massive department, over 200 staff, hundreds more in the summer times. And I think that is the project that I am most proud of. It's amazing to be a part of the actual build out of facilities that impact our communities. But I think that they are thriving under that organizational structure. And I think it will continue to serve. I think that's the thing I'm most proud of, Jay.
Cool. That's a great answer.
So when you talked about moving around, you say it's just you that moves around, but it's not true. You've got a couch that's as old as some of the lifeguards you've hired. And it goes everywhere you go. What is the significance of that couch?
So I have a couch in my office. Not many people have made that choice. Very early on, I decided to purchase a love seat. There's lots of seating opportunities in my office spaces, and the offices have never been terribly large, but there's a table for formal conversations, but the couch allows for the informal. It allows for just general conversation and camaraderie. It allows for a casualness. And we tackle a lot of really hard things in a more casual manner. If people, they fight over sitting on the couch. And honestly, it's an alternate place for me to sit as well. If I'm reading a long document, I get the chance to hop out of my chair and go sit someplace comfortable. Yeah, the back of the couch has, personal property of Kara Kish, but it's been a staple in my office since I was an assistant director, and it will continue to be. And it fundamentally changes the experience of interacting with me and the way that I get to interact with my team. We sit at the table when we have formal business to discuss and need a space to spread out documents. But I think more than seldom we're using the people are fighting over sitting in the couch, and then I just turn around and chat, and it's just it's made a profound sort of impact on how myself and my team show up for easy discussions and hard discussions.
Have couch will travel. We're
Have
gonna make you a
couch
shirt.
will travel.
So, just for the record, Kara and I have had a lot of conversations over the years on just maybe similar philosophies on things and just our passions for things. And I want to make it known I'm going to turn I
Oh
have a
boy,
couch right here as well.
look at that!
What?
It's
The
amazing.
couch crew. Wow. All right.
It'll change your life, gentlemen.
All right, Kara, my last rapid for you, and that's it has to do with the fact that we asked this question to some other individuals, but you are one of the ultimate Parks and Rec professionals. If you had to vision yourself in another career, or maybe did at one point, what would that be?
It's an impossible question, Tom, because it's never even occurred to me. Like, I don't know how to describe how early on this, even before I knew there was a career involved in it, I knew that there was this contribution to community that Parks and Recreation offered. Once I locked in, like so talk about being the lifeguard with Ryan. So, my boss, I was a high school kid. My boss was a college student. And then there was always this old guy that came around, and he probably was in his 30s, but like this old guy kept coming around, and I started asking questions like, who is that? He always comes in the office and he picks up things and like, oh, he works for Parks and Recreation Department. I said, what is that? And sparked my curiosity early on. What would I be? Maybe a park ranger, like the interpretive. That's not getting far enough outside of our industry, is it?
While you're thinking, I've shared on the podcast in the past, but we're coming up on the year anniversary of one of the lifeguards that works for me as the department head thought I was their Uber Eats driver. So I might need to be doing a better job of introducing myself. The food had got delivered to the office, and I had gone over there to see if it was them. The lifeguards are right next door to us. And there was a girl sitting out there, and I was like, hey, did you order food? She was like, yeah, can you just bring it in? And I was like, that's your Uber driver. Got delivered over here. The director of this department.
Tom, maybe a musician.
Oh.
And I don't play. So it's not
So you
like
wouldn't have been a successful
career. No, I wouldn't have been a successful
one.
one.
A struggling musician.
Great answer.
But I love performing arts of all types. I go to performances all the time, and there's something about music that just...
That's true. When we seldom talk that you haven't been to a show, or you're heading that way to a show, or you're excited about the next. And it's not like Motley Crue or whatever. It's not like you're going to like all different types of like actual performances.
Yeah, don't rule out the Motley Crue, but
I'm just saying it's not just that, right? It's not just like a concert show. You're going to like an orchestral show, or you're going to some sort of Broadway type performance as well.
Yep. Dance performances, small theater performances. I'm just so impacted by these stories that people are able to create, whether or not it's the spoken word or body movement or the sound of music or the bass drum, which that there are Metallica tickets later in the summers. Yeah, the performing arts in general are just a very important part of my life. Or should I say baseball player?
Nope, too late.
Too late. My favorite sport, which I've caught so many baseball games with our fam, and I haven't found good baseball up in Northern Colorado yet.
I know you've been to a lot of stadiums. What's your favorite stadium you've been to?
Yeah, my favorite stadium is Salt Lake City. The AAA, the Bees. It's pretty spectacular. Small stadium, mountain views.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then up in, where was it? Maybe in Massachusetts. It's the Sea Dogs. I think it's the
Portland.
double or AAA. Oh, it was in Portland.
Yeah, that's Portland.
The double or AAA for the Red Sox.
The Red Sox. Yep.
Yeah, and they have their own green monster there. Smaller stadium.
Yeah. It's a cool stadium.
I've been to, I saw the Savannah Bananas before they were anything. And I do remember showing up, there was a little bit of like a party atmosphere, and I showed up and I'm just like, what is this? And it wasn't what it is today, but they were having good fun. The guy in the yellow suit was hanging around, but that was over a decade ago when I went to a Bananas game. I think my favorite major league stadium is Pittsburgh.
It's a good one.
It's a really amazing experience to walk across the bridges, and really enjoyed that. Or the Cleveland Stadium, which is a part of my growing up and my life experiences. Everything that when they moved in Cleveland, they moved out of the municipal stadium where both the Indians and Browns played, and then moved to Jacobs Field, which was an awesome small stadium.
Hey, thanks so much for giving us some time today. This has been great.
It's been great, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Yes.
I appreciate you putting up with all of our crap in this process too.
I'll keep showing up for it.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kara.
All right,
Thanks,
gentlemen.
Kara.
Take good care.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Love her.
Oh, you just made my day. I love talking to her.
A lot of patience she had to endure there in the beginning and in the show, but
I don't know if she has anything she can share with her comms team either, but it was fun. This was a fun episode.
it was a good one.
I really think she's incredibly resilient, incredibly tough. She's overcome a lot of different adversity that I think a lot of other park and rec professionals would have folded in, and you still see her smiling. A lot to be said about that.
Yeah, great outlook.
For sure.
And definitely maybe for one of our socials, we can ask her to send us her 3 rules.
Yeah, I kind of thought, if we hadn't gone up against it, I would have loved, because I bet she could have cranked hers out.
Yep.
She's the type of person that's probably got them tattooed somewhere, like she probably knows them. Awesome, fellas. Thanks for being on.
All right, guys.
Thanks, man.
I appreciate you all adjusting for me too.
One time. That's it. Never again.
This is my one time. All right.
All right, fellas.
All right,
When
guys.
he called me yesterday, he wanted to do it without you, so he wasn't going to adjust.
I thought, man, this is our chance.
Well, I offered. That was the first offer.
This was our chance. We could split our speaking request 2 ways if we could just lose this one up here.
All right, guys. Have a good
Guys.
weekend.
See ya. Bye.
Follow RecLess Podcast on YouTube for more content and outtakes. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow along on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for news and exclusive clips. RecLess Podcast is edited and produced by Hannah Mize. Thanks for listening. See you next time.